Okay, so welcome back for the week 2 part 2, right? So in the part 1 of this week, I explained why we need to have some kind of organized way of programming, right? And there were two types, the procedure-oriented one, and there is another one called object-oriented one, right? This is kind of creating bunch of functions, and this is creating classes, and there was data associated for a certain purpose, and also functions. And then at the last part, we talked about the UML, which is the standard way of designing objects, right? So this is much more about the UML and how to design objects and classes, right? So software design is similar to the construction, and in the construction field, it has its own standard. And in the software design and software development, we have also our own standards, right? And you are going to learn this standard to build a complicated software artifacts with your design, right? So a very simple, the UML, the schematic notation is the class diagram. This is called class diagram, right? Because it represents a certain class. There might be an abstract class, which we are going to discuss later. And we have a class, a simple class, which is a schematic, and there is a named instance. We now know the instantiation, right? And this is this variable, the instantiated class object is called park, right? And sometimes we make an instantiated class and we don't name that. Sometimes it happens, all right? So we have this box, right? We have this box, and it has three parts: the first small part, and second part, and third part. And its first part, it has an instance name here, and it has class name here, right? And the second box contains the member variables, a set of variables. In MATLAB world, it is called properties, okay? And in properties, there are names and types, right? We have string, we have double, and we have like the decimal integer and so forth. We did some experiment in the week 1. Also, we have some cellular-based arrays and so forth. After the colon, you specify that, right? And this is the variable name, right? And in the third box of this class diagram, we have functions. We have function name here, and we have this parenthesis, which is going to be the place that you can insert some parameters, okay? And we have some return values, okay? So for instance, if we do have some review class, because it's not instantiated yet, we have just a review here, and it's divided into two parts, and the first part is the words, and it's going to be a set array, okay? And in the method parts, we have get word index, okay? And we have parameters, say that what can it be? We might not have the parameters, and its return is a vector, or a 1 by 29717 vector, and so forth, right? And this is too much detail, so we can just skip this and a vector. Or 1 by n matrix would be sufficient, right? So this is how you draw it. Of course, if things get much complex, if your functions require some parameters, you can put some values here, like the parentheses and variable a, variable comma b, and so forth, right? So this is how you draw the class diagram. We are going to see some examples later. By using this UML diagram, we have to know a certain things, like the object-oriented design. The object classes have some characteristics that comes pretty handy. So, object is a summation of the consists of data and behavior. This data is called field, member, variable, attribute. In meta world is called properties. All right. And in behavior part, it's called methods. In meta world, it calls methods and member functions and operations. And the creating object, designing objects, one important thing is the simplifications and decomposition and delegation. Delegation means that sometimes I call it in bring me a sausage and I don't care how you made it. Let's see this small picture. We see this small picture and we see these two nodes, right? Somehow some functions are performed here. A certain function, right? We don't care how the function is made. We just have two nodes as an interfaces, right? So let's consider it a certain function. What's happening here is data inside. And these two nodes are the functions to control it. For example, let's imagine there is an architecture and also there is an interior artist. The main concern of this architecture was like the building architecture. Its overall compositions are important for them. And as an interior artist, they are more concerned about the location, size, and these stuffs. These interfaces, or called functions, are important to how to communicate with the others. Communication with other functions and the classes, right? And for this person, the location and size, these properties of this room is important. For instance, the color might be an important stuff. For the other elements, for the other lobbies and restrooms and so forth, they are very important. They really concerned about how to open the door, how to open the window, and how that relate to the other rooms. The architectures are important, but it doesn't care about the colors or the and size of the door and etc. For the interior artist, these are the things that matters, right? So what you want to do is encapsulate this kind of this data inside of this capsule, and we want to change this data by using these properties. The other outside effect uses these functions to change inside. So these two nodes are used to change this data, right? So functions are often accessible by other functions. Functions are often accessible by the other classes. Data sets are maintained by using these interface functions. What makes things important? Because we are boundarizing this data set, this data, inside data from the outside effects. We make sure that only these functions are responsible in changing this data. And some errors happen. And some errors in a certain data happen, then we know where to go, right? We know where to look up. And those are the functions that data take. Those functions are the functions that take care about the data, right? So that's how we encapsulate data, and we separate out the responsibilities. Okay, and we have these visibility things. We have this private, protected, and public, and things like that. In MATLAB, we can specify these things, but I'm not going to go details about this at this level. Okay. So from the previous slide set encapsulation, well, we use this class diagram to talk about some the code materials. We actually didn't have that code materials, and we are abstracting the code materials, the codes, programs, as a single diagram to discuss further, right?